Good morning, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar on Signs It's Time to Upgrade from Microsoft Dynamics GP to AX. I'm Dee Bowers, and I'll be your moderator. So before we get started, I just wanted to go over how to use the webinar pane. So on the right side of your monitor, you should see an orange button with a white arrow. If you click that button, you'll be able to toggle the webinar pane between the open and closed position. You'll also see a small chat window. Please feel free to enter questions in throughout the presentation. We'll address those at the end of the webinar during our Q&A session as time allows. So on to our audio settings. So on the GoToWebinar pane, you should see an area for audio settings. If you're calling in on your telephone, please make sure to use the Use Telephone option. Alternatively, if you're using your computer, please select the Use Mic and Speakers option. Last of all, webinar participants will receive an email within 48 hours with a link to the recorded webinar and slide deck. Now that we've gone over the meeting software, I'd like to introduce you to our presenters. First, we have Chris Moore. Chris is a partner here at Armanino and leads our Dynamics practice. He brings over 20 years of experience of consulting and leadership on hundreds of ERP implementations, ranging from emerging companies to global enterprises. We also have John Van Meter. John is a manager of sales and business development at Armanino. He brings over 11 years of experience providing guidance on Microsoft Dynamics solutions to mid-market companies. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Chris.
Good morning, everybody. I'm really happy today to have the opportunity to talk to you a little bit about why companies are migrating from Dynamics GP up to Dynamics AX. So I've been working with the Dynamics platform for the last 10 years, and prior to Dynamics, I was employed with Accenture, so involved in system integration, helping companies implement business solutions for the last 20 years. But at Armanino, as an organization, we have three different divisions. We have our audit group, our tax group, and our consulting organization. Within the consulting team, we have about 150 GP customers and around 75 AX clients. And we've got over 100 professionals within Armanino focus on delivering services on Microsoft Dynamics solutions. So today what we planned on covering was we wanted to go through and talk to a few points as they relate to why companies are considering upgrading from GP to another platform like Dynamics AX. And as we go through each one of these reasons, I'm going to go through and talk through a couple of case studies associated with each one to give you an idea as to why companies in the past have considered upgrading as it relates to, to the key point that we're trying to deliver. In addition to that, we're going to go through and talk through a few of the metrics to consider as you're putting together an ROI around upgrading and presenting that to your team. And then lastly, we're going to go through and discuss some of the tools and techniques that we've developed to make the upgrade process as simple as possible. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to John, and John's going to start talking through some of the key signs to look for as part of an upgrade.
Thanks, Chris. So, as we go through these, Chris, and as Chris mentioned, I'll cover some of the key points, and Chris will give some of the real-world case studies, and hopefully that, allows you to relate it back to the situations that, you may be facing in your organization that's causing you to start thinking through whether or not the time may be right to make that transition into upgrade to a more global ERP solution like Dynamics AX. So the first sign is growth, and in growth it's a great thing. It's what companies strive for, but it doesn't come without its challenges. There's a lot of changes that occur around things like transaction volumes and a need to scale your processes with greater automation. Also, having things like distributed workforces across locations presents new challenges. In addition, whenever companies introduce new products or service lines, it often comes with new requirements that come about to support those new introductions.
Yeah, and one of the case studies that I wanted to talk about was a company called Sigmatel. It's a great case study, partially because it was one of our first GP to AX upgrades about 7 years ago. Anyways, from an organization, they're a high-tech manufacturing organization, and they had intense growth. They went from $20 million when we started working with them, and over the course of the next 3 years, the company went to $350 million in revenue. The key thing here is that GP, or Dynamics GP, was struggling to support the fast growth. and some of the complexity around the supply chain as Sigmatel went from a national organization to a global entity. AX was a perfect fit and helped enable their global reach as they expanded to Taiwan, Hong Kong. And I guess the most important component was that it supported the complexity around their supply chain and allowed them to integrate with some of their supply chain partners, which gave them better visibility to the manufacturing that Sigmatel was tracking. So anyway, so Sigmatel's a great story, and with that, we'll go on to the next point.
All right. So global expansion is another sign where Dynamics GP is probably going to be stretched to its limits in terms of being able to support the requirements around multiple currencies, multiple languages, and really localizations or local regulatory reporting requirements. So, what would happen if you needed to move a manufacturing plant to China and you needed those workers to be working on the system in simple Chinese? What would happen if you needed to comply with the local financial statutes in Brazil? Those are the types of questions where, even if you aren't there today, if it's somewhere where you aspire to be, it certainly is a challenge to try and support a process like that with a Dynamics GP instance, whereas Dynamics AX is really designed naturally to support that type of global localization. And the other major point there is just being able to do all of the consolidations, having all of the ERP capabilities in a single central instance. That really helps the economies of scale around that support for global expansion.
Yeah, and a couple of companies that we helped migrate from Dynamics GP to AX, Onyx Pharmaceuticals and Jazz Pharmaceuticals, both organizations expanded globally. One of the ones that I was going to focus on was Onyx. As they continued to grow, they had additional complexities around FDA validation and compliance. They wanted to implement electronic signature, which is part of the FDA, CFR Part 11 requirements. Their overall footprint within Dynamics AX now enables them to support multi-currency, multi-languages. When we started working with Onyx Pharmaceuticals on the GP platform, their market cap was somewhere around 100 million. Today, it's closer to 10 billion. So the other key thing about the Onyx Pharmaceutical implementation was that as we went through the process where we validated, as they went through the process to define what the next right ERP solution was for them, they went through a 3-month exhaustive selection with Oracle and Dynamics AX, and did find that AX met the requirements both from a regulatory and a business process perspective. So overall, great story.
So the third sign is related to mergers and acquisitions. In a strategic sense, mergers and acquisitions, they really focus on that 1 + 1 = 3 mentality of being able to get more out of the combined entity than if they were to operate as individuals. And so really all of those economies of scale, those synergies in business processes, shared administrative capabilities, and even in some sense vertical integration or intercompany trade, those types of synergies are often not realized when you have fragmented systems or disparate processes and goals that aren't fully aligned across the new organization. So it's more like putting puzzle pieces together and trying to get adjunct organizations to become a single global entity. And so what we see with companies that are facing this, whether it's an impending merger or acquisition, or it's something where you have GP in one instance and you've got another ERP or a second instance of GP, sometimes it's just a great opportunity to make that change to a system that will support the broader organization and help you align goals on a more global sense. And so with that, Chris will give you an example of where we've done that with one of our clients.
Yeah, and so Microsemi is a great story. We've had a long-term relationship with them like the previous ones that we talked about. But Microsemi is about a $1.2 billion organization. We started working with them when they were about a $200 million company. Over the last 5 years, they have gone through 16 different acquisitions. On each one of them, they've been able to bring the acquired companies onto the Dynamics AX platform and really take advantage of Dynamics AX as their enterprise global application set. Of the 16 companies, 3 of them were on Dynamics GP. And so leveraging some of the tools and techniques that we have, we were able to bring them from the GP instance over to the Dynamics AX instance. You know, Microsemi's got a pretty complex environment. They're a mixed mode manufacturer. They have process manufacturing, lean as well as discrete. But we're able to, you know, take a lot of those capabilities that they were that were implemented on GP and migrate them over to AX. So overall, a great story, you know, around how companies have come off of GP onto AX.
Great. The fourth sign is complexity, and complexity is, you know, more of a general category here. But in terms of mid-market companies, those that are, you know, growing out of the GP, you know, and coming more into an AX type of a situation, well, we see that in terms of just the overall business operations of the mid-market, global operations is more of the norm. So having overseas supply chain partners or entering new territories, setting up complex sales channel networks, opening up new offices, you know, having shared services or centralized processes across various organizational structures. All of that leads to additional complexity, and as you get into, you know, more of the multi-entity type complexity or overseas type supply chain complexity, you really start to hit a threshold or a breaking point on the Dynamics GP platform, whereas you can certainly scale to support those types of business processes on Dynamics AX in a seamless manner.
Yeah, and one such company that I want to talk to is a company called Impinj. They're a high-tech manufacturing company. They're up in Seattle. And if you've ever run in a race, like, you know, a 5K, a 10K, or a marathon, they always give you these RFID tags to put on your shoes, and you'll always see the word Impinj. So Impinj is one of the leaders around RFID technology. They were on GP, Dynamics GP initially. At that time, they had a small product mix, and GP was able to support their business. But as they expanded into more system-related software, additional services, and a more complex product mix around RFID technology, they needed an application to support that growth. So Dynamics AX was a natural fit. And the cool thing about these guys is they went from Dynamics GP to AX 2009 and recently upgraded to 2012. So they've got a global footprint. And this is an example of a company that's not, you know, a huge company. They're still probably only $100 million, but they had more complex requirements. So going to AX really allowed them to more efficiently run their organization.
All right, the fifth sign is around fragmented systems and manual processes, and we see this in every organization that we really work with. And the gist of it is that over time, people, you know, cycle in and out of an organization. There's, you know, preferences from a departmental level of ways people want to work. And, you know, when you have a system like Dynamics GP that does a lot of things well, especially around the financial management of an organization, we tend to see people bringing in additional systems like, you know, CRM systems or product lifecycle systems or other types of, you know, quality systems that come into play. And a lot of times these systems don't talk to each other, and there's manual processes that are brought on board to communicate various things, so whether it's spreadsheets or access databases. And so you get these silos of information, and you know, not everything's talking to each other, and it just creates a lot of latency and blind spots in the organization. So, you know, what we see is not just that there's a lack of, you know, data integrity or duplicity in the you know, entering of information. It's more around, you know, fragmented processes that come around from that, where, you know, a single person doesn't necessarily own the entire order-to-cash process. There might be 5, 6 systems involved, many people, you know, trying to communicate across that process. And so just having a system that's more cohesive and able to eliminate a lot of those manual processes brings a lot of benefits. And so that's what we see when clients move to Dynamics AX, is they're able to bring a lot more into that central global source of the truth and eliminate a lot of those manual processes.
Yeah, and a good example of a company that really exemplifies this is a company called Accuray. Accuray is a $500 million medical device manufacturing company. They manufacture these large devices that are used to shoot radiation to eradicate cancerous tumors. So it's you know, it's something that you'd build into like a bunker into a hospital. So it's a large capital equipment manufacturer. And this one is especially near and dear to my heart because I was involved in the sales and the implementation activities around Accuray. Initially, they were one of North America's largest Dynamics GP users. But even with GP, they had over 35 disparate systems that they were supporting. As they continued to grow, they enlisted Capgemini to take them through an evaluation, and they looked at SAP, Oracle, and Dynamics AX. 6 months later, they selected Dynamics AX as their platform to move forward with, and have been live on Dynamics AX for the last 2 years. The other interesting thing is, about a year after they went live, they acquired a company called Tomotherapy out in Madison, Wisconsin. They were running SAP at the time, so then we went through another evaluation. Hey, does it make sense to stay on AX or adopt the SAP? And the decision was to migrate Tomotherapy to AX. And now just recently, Accuray has decided to move to the Dynamics CRM 2011 platform and integrate that with Dynamics AX. So they're all in on Microsoft and Dynamics, and it's been a good story in terms of how they've been able to consolidate systems. Another point I wanted to bring up on this one is we do have a white paper around the GP to AX migration, and as part of that, we go into a little bit more detail around the Accuray case study.
Right. And so the sixth sign here is that, when you get to a point in your processes where you have a lot of challenges around streamlining operations, it creates a degree of latency in the overall processes. One of the biggest areas we hear concerns on is the ability to report on data, so being able to get performance metrics. And that really comes into play when companies are using 3, 4, 5 different databases to manage an end-to-end process, and they really don't have a single cohesive view of the information. There may be challenges around master data. There may be latency just around doing batch jobs of pulling information from one system to the next. And so just not having a clean reporting structure really reduces the speed that organizations are able to operate at.
And a good example of another organization that we're able to migrate off of the GP platform to AX is a company called Tripwire. Tripwire is up in Portland, Oregon. They're a software organization, and they specialize in IT security software. The key thing here is that Tripwire had a separate system for licensing, another one for revenue recognition, another one for subscriptions and sales order processing. So really being able to migrate to Dynamics AX gave them the capability to speed up the time in which they were able to collect information, enter transactions, allow them to consolidate onto a single system and a single source of truth. They were able to speed up their close process by 50%, and the overall reporting and the consolidation of data was improved greatly to give them better visibility to their business transactions.
And finally, the seventh sign is, it's something that every CFO and CEO out there is just, dying for, and that's a real trustworthy dashboard or some way to have true insight into the business and to be able to view the overall performance metrics that are going on. And so when you have GP where you're using maybe multiple instances of GP to support each individual company, or you have other systems in place, having that central global dashboard, it becomes a bigger challenge. And because of that, fewer companies are able to ever reach that level of automation or that level of insight into their business.
And a good example of a company that exemplified this was Seattle Times. So at the time, Seattle Times was on Dynamics GP, and they were running finance only on that platform. As we transition them to Dynamics AX, they're able to implement a pretty complex business intelligence system. They were able to take their order processing, which was on a separate system, and their subscription-based users, which was on a third system, and put them on an enterprise application and really consolidate their applications. Now they have the ability to do drill down in easy analysis on the data. It really gives them the capability to look at things like cash collection, which was another disparate system, and allow them to provide electronic controls to their website. So we implemented some integration to support the advertising side of the business. So a little bit on Seattle Times. One of the things as you're going through and putting together an ROI associated with upgrading to Dynamics AX and trying to put together some costs and reasons for your management team to consider it, you really have to go back and look at the number of applications you're supporting on the GP platform. Look at the number of resources that it takes to support it, review software and maintenance costs, the number of partners that you have relationships with to support those, and also the modifications and integrations required to support having disparate systems. So the key thing is identifying some of those costs to help you put together a overall business case. The other types of costs I think that are a little less tangible is really looking at the number of inefficient processes that are offline or using Excel in order to manage. And some of our organizations, as they're looking at Dynamics AX, are looking at things like controls, the ability to regulate. For example, customers that are in a regulated industry like pharmaceutical or medical device, the cost of not being able to do something like a recall or having standard business processes can be an expensive liability. So that's an intangible cost that you can put into the overall justification of building that business case. The next thing I wanted to point out was, building a case, and being a change agent. In my experience in helping companies decide on, approaches and systems and really thinking through what's the next best thing. There are two types of organizations that I've run into. You've got the tactical organizations, and then you have the strategic organization. The guys that think tactically are typically evaluating, their IT decisions based on what they need to do to get by, or what can they do to minimize their cost, or enable like a status quo from the current environment. The strategic companies that really use IT to help make their companies more efficient are thinking about things like, hey, how can I do better with my IT infrastructure? How can I provide better tools for the business? How can I help my company grow to be more successful? So taking your organization to be more strategic and thinking through how you can leverage technology to be more strategic, I think is the way to go.
Great. So what I want to do is just touch on three key areas with regards to the upgrade process and some of the tools and repeatable techniques that Armanino really brings to the table and that we've leveraged just from our experience in terms of doing it for dozens of customers now. The first is about laying the foundation and really why stay with a Microsoft stack. We realize that as companies are outgrowing GP, there is a breaking point that they ultimately will reach, based on those 7 signs that, pain points really that we hear very frequently. At that point, you have an opportunity to look at other systems. And really, I wanted to just dig into a little bit of the detail around why so many customers are choosing to stay with Microsoft and work with the Microsoft stack. The second is around business process mapping. So the business process mapping aspects of it will really touch on the value of working with a partner who has all that cross-platform experience, deep understanding of both the GP and AX capabilities, and really what you're coming from and what you're migrating to, and can really articulate that value and speak the same language. And then the third process I'll talk to is about the data conversion process and some of the tools and techniques we have there that make that a very streamlined process. All right, so why Dynamics AX? Considering you have other options at that transition point, what we see is that customers really benefit from just the overall Microsoft stack. They realize that there is a familiarity that their users already have with the system. It's a level of comfort, and it comes from things like the Microsoft Office navigation, all the integration with the other Microsoft Office tools like two-way integration with Excel, Word, Outlook, PowerPoint, with Microsoft Link capabilities from a VoIP communication. And so having that level of familiarity really reduces the amount of training time. And I think it also makes a big difference in terms of the success of the overall project, because customers that are familiar and comfortable with the system are more likely to use it and using the system is sort of the critical point of making it a successful venture for your company. The other thing is around staying with the Microsoft family. You are able to take advantage of the Microsoft's dollar-for-dollar investment credit, and really what that looks like is every single dollar that you spent on your initial GP investment gets applied as a credit towards your purchase of AX. And I mean, you can't beat that. It's a great way to incent companies to stay, but it also makes use of all the investment that you guys have made, and it makes sure that even the maintenance, if you're midterm in your maintenance, you apply every dollar outstanding on that maintenance credit towards your AX purchase as well. So it makes it a pretty natural migration process, and one that is taken by a lot of clients. So in terms of the overall Microsoft stack, when you move to Dynamics AX from Dynamics GP, the assumption is you already are using some Microsoft tools and technologies today. Likely using the Windows Server. You're probably using the SQL Server and Microsoft Office technologies. But really, when you move to AX, you get even more out of the overall platform. As you know, Microsoft invests billions of dollars in R&D. It's $9 billion a year to take advantage of the entire stack and to progress the technologies further. And they really have focused on something called pervasive interoperability, where all of these tools and technologies work together as a cohesive solution. So you aren't supporting 10 different products, you're supporting one, and it's really leveraging the best of all the other supporting elements here. And so I'll just give a few examples of those. In terms of the Windows Server, it supports Active Directory single sign-on. So instead of having a second sign-on for your GP application, it's all integrated into your same Active Directory security. Another example is SharePoint. Microsoft SharePoint has a ton of capabilities that are designed specifically for Dynamics AX, and they're really part and parcel to the same solution. SQL Server brings all the technologies from a business intelligence perspective, two-way integration to Office, etc. So a lot of capabilities, especially things with Microsoft Windows 8 apps and mobility, and a lot of innovation that continues to be brought on board there. The other point that I was going to talk a little bit about was to support the AX to GP transition process. Armanino's implementation methodology around that has a lot of end-to-end business process templates. And so these are Visio workflow diagram with your supporting documentation to really help clients understand that end-to-end process flow, to help them relate to what they're using in Dynamics GP today to how they can improve their business as they implement Dynamics AX. And so the real key here is that as being end-to-end process definitions, it really supports that flow across departments, brings people into a collaborative setting where they can evaluate the multiple tools and technologies and manual processes that are in place, and can really bring that benefit to the objective of implementing a more full-featured ERP solution. And so, for instance, if you take the order-to-cash process, all the way from the CRM to sales quote process to the sales operation creating the order and shipping it, all the pick, pack, ship process, AR creating the invoice, posting the payment. So really creating a whole streamlined view from the CRM all the way to the AR allows you to take a end-to-end business process approach. So in addition to being highly skilled in both applications, Armanino also brings forth a data conversion process that allows you to seamlessly go from Dynamics GP to Dynamics AX. And with that, we've pre-built a lot of templates for the data conversion process. And so when you start from Dynamics GP, we understand the data models there, know how to take the smart list and extract all the information out that we need, or SQL scripting. We've got a series of Excel templates that allow you to populate those and load them into what we have as a workbench, an Armanino Toolkit built directly within Dynamics AX to map the data to and allow you to do validations on all that data to make sure that what you're bringing into the new system is all accurate. For instance, the customer's address is accurate, the zip code's matched to the geocode. So that type of validation in the overall upgrade process is just one of the dozens of templates we have. And this tool set saves a lot of time and energy. It's generally a a time-consuming and error-prone process to go from one ERP solution to the next, but we really streamline that and make it a painless process. So, in summary, I think that, in terms of the overall upgrade process, what Armanino brings to the table is, first off, it's a natural migration going from the technology stack. We bring a lot in terms of the process mapping and helping you get more out of the system and realize the benefits that you set out to achieve by making the migration. And then third, just making sure that we have the tools and techniques to make it a very repeatable and low-risk process. And that's why a lot of customers are making that transition and making the decision to go from GP to AX.
Okay, great, John. Thank you. I appreciate it. And so today, we tried to address. Today we tried to address. Today we tried.
Sorry, Chris.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Today we tried to address why companies would consider a Dynamics AX platform or decision move from GP to AX. We've discussed some of the capabilities and some of the key reasons. We provided some examples of companies. That have made the switch to AX, and really reviewed some of the techniques and components around building a business case to convince your management team or your super users to consider a switch to an AX platform. And then lastly, we try to focus on some of the tools and techniques that Armanino brings to the table. But at the end of the day, every company is a little bit different. So as you're going through and reviewing and assessing the state of your business application, whether or not it makes sense moving to a Dynamics AX, make sure and reach out to Armanino. We'd be happy to help that decision-making process. With that, I want to say thank you, and then Dee, I'll turn it over to you to address any questions we might have.
Thanks, Chris. So yeah, let's go ahead and get started with some questions. We already have some that's come up through the queue here, and just continue to send them over, and we'll just get started with these here. So we have one question here that says, how long will it take me to transition from Dynamics GP to AX?
That's a great question.
Or John?
Yeah, no, that's great. This is Chris. Thanks, Dee. I appreciate it. Good question. Of the companies that we've implemented from GP to AX, it depends on the complexity of the implementation, number of sites, capabilities that they're going to be expanding out to AX. But in our experience, the upgrade from GP to AX is somewhere in that 3 to 6 month time frame for most of our customers.
Okay, perfect. So another one that we had come in is AX going to be available in the cloud?
And I'll go ahead and take that one, Dee. So this is John. So AX is going to be available in the cloud. And in fact, today, a lot of customers are deploying it, whether it's in a private data center or they're applying it in a partner's software as a service hosting center as more of a private cloud. But even still, it can be implemented on Windows Azure, which is a public cloud and probably more similar to what people would refer to as the cloud. So it's completely flexible in terms of its deployment capability. And we're seeing more and more customers going towards that type of a model where they're able to offload it for either having somebody else manage the technical infrastructure, or they just want to have the scalability of the hardware infrastructure to support seasonal volumes, for instance.
Okay, perfect. And here's a great question, too. If I'm currently on GP with third-party products or customizations, how does upgrading to AX affect me? So.
Yeah, no, great question. Thank you, Dee. This is Chris. I'll take that one. Good question. As in my experience with companies that have moved from GP to AX, most of the customizations and modifications, have either gone away or have been implemented or configured within Dynamics AX. Dynamics AX has a very strong integration architecture, so it's a lot easier to implement the integrations if they are still required. But in my experience, most of the companies that move from GP to AX have been able to eliminate a good portion of those.
Okay. And then another question was, what size of companies is AX designed for?
Sure. So in terms of the types of companies that move from GP to AX, we see companies, small and large, generally smaller companies in anticipation of growth. So anywhere from the 25 to 50 million range is where we see sort of the lower end of GP clients moving up to AX, and then that goes well up into the billion-dollar global enterprise. So AX is really a mid-market to enterprise level solution.
Okay, so let's just see if we have a few more that might be coming in here.
Yeah, Dee, I'm looking up there and I see a question: integration of barcoding systems with a Dynamics AX. This is a great question. Dynamics AX is fully enabled with barcode capabilities. So any of the different transactions, you can print barcodes out on any of the documents. In terms of like RF capabilities with Dynamics AX, for the current release, which is Dynamics AX Feature Pack R2, Microsoft has several business partners like RF Smart and ScanWorks that have RF mobility capabilities. With the feature pack that's going to be coming out towards the end of the year, which is R3, there are going to be additional capabilities that facilitate RF features and functions out of the box. So looking forward to that release in the November-December timeframe.
Okay, and it looks like another question around the says, we use GP with the Windows SharePoint Business Portal. Is there an equivalent SharePoint site for AX? So the answer to that is yes. The Dynamics AX SharePoint site capability is significantly improved over the Dynamics GP SharePoint capabilities. There is a full employee self-service website which allows employees to do HR self-service, enter in expense reports, purchase requisitions, access their purchasing catalogs, and do a lot of the self-service type capabilities. There's also customer-specific portals where customers can come in and make purchases, see the status of their orders. There's a vendor portal that does the same on the vendor side, allowing them to upload things such as their product catalogs, being able to answer RFQ questions. So just a lot more capabilities there. In addition, they have a full e-commerce capability built on SharePoint as well. So a whole e-commerce site is an additional area where you'd see value from the Dynamics AX stack.
Yeah, and one other point that I wanted to bring up along those same lines is got the collaborative workspaces, and John touched upon it as it relates to a vendor relationship. But also, you could have a project, and a project you could have, subcontractors, you could have vendors, you could have customer relationships, and you can spin up a collaborative workspace where you can share documents, all through like a SharePoint interface. So very powerful capabilities. You can do that within AX in a lot of different areas. So pretty cool stuff. I think that's our last question. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Dee to conclude.
Okay, great. Well, if you didn't hear your question asked or responded to during the webinar, we will get back to you offline. Or if you have any more specific questions that you think of a little bit later, feel free to contact John or Chris directly. There's their contact information right up there. So we thank you for coming. And as you exit the webinar, there's going to be a quick survey. We ask that you just take a moment and let us know how we're doing. And we thank you for your time and have a great day.